World Most Dangerous Women or Black Widows. Number 1. Kulthum Akbari is an Iran's Black Widow, also an Iranian serial killer who was convicted of killing 11 of her elderly husbands over a 20-year period to steal their money and property. She was sentenced to 10 death penalties in September 2025. Akbari targeted wealthy older men whom she married, often without official marriage licenses, with the intent of inheriting their assets. She poisoned her victims using a combination of drugs, including blood pressure and diabetes medications, sedatives, and industrial alcohol, to make their deaths appear to be from natural causes due to their age and pre-existing conditions. In at least one case, she also suffocated a victim with a pillow after he was incapacitated. Her crimes went undetected for decades until 2023, when the son of her last husband, 82-year-old Azizola Babaye, grew suspicious of the circumstances surrounding his father's death. This led to her arrest, during which she confessed to the murders, though she gave conflicting accounts of the exact number of victims. During the trial in Sari, Iran, prosecutors revealed she faced 11 charges of premeditated murder and 1 count of attempted murder. In September 2025, a court sentenced her to 10 death penalties after the families of those victims demanded qisas, retribution in kind. The family of the 11th victim agreed to accept blood money instead of the death penalty. She also received an additional 10-year prison sentence for the attempted murder charge. The case has drawn significant public and media attention, and many of the victims' families have publicly called for her execution. Number 2. Belle Gunness, born Brynhild Paulsdatter Sturseth in Norway in 1859, is historically recognized as one of America's most notorious female serial killers, and she did kill at least some of her husbands. Her second husband, Peter Gunness, died suddenly in 1900 at their Chicago home. Officially, his death was ruled as an accident after a meat grinder allegedly fell from a shelf and struck his head. However, investigators later noted clear inconsistencies. Bell was alone with him at the time. The injury was severe and oddly precise, and, most interestingly, Peter had recently taken out a life insurance policy from which Bell collected a substantial payout. Witnesses also reported prior domestic violence and threats made by Bell. Peter's death fit a broader and chilling pattern. Bell later married Andrew Helgeline, who disappeared in 1908 after transferring his entire savings to her. His remains were later discovered buried on her Indiana farm, alongside the bodies of several other men. These findings led historians and criminologists to conclude that Peter Gunness's death was very likely a homicide, making him one of Belle Gunness's earliest known victims in a killing spree driven by money, deception, and extreme violence. Number 3. Nanny Doss, the smiling widow who poisoned love. To those who met her, Nanny Hazel Doss seemed harmless, almost sweet. She laughed often. Her soft chuckle drifted through police interrogation rooms, hospital wards, and courtrooms, earning her the chilling nickname that would follow her into history, the giggling granny. But beneath that constant, soft, smiley face lived one of America's most quietly prolific female serial killers, a woman who poisoned 4 of her husbands, along with other family members, all while insisting she was only looking for love. Husband 1, Charlie Braggs. The beginning of death. At 16 years old, Nanny married Charlie Braggs, a factory worker. The marriage was miserable from the start. Charlie drank heavily, disappeared for days, and was unfaithful. Nanny, trapped in poverty and pregnancy, grew bitter. They had 4 daughters, but tragedy soon followed. 2 of the children died suddenly, officially blamed on food poisoning. At the time, no one questioned it. Years later, investigators would return to those deaths with unease. Charlie himself fell ill repeatedly, suffering violent stomach pain, vomiting, and weakness. Classic symptoms of arsenic poisoning, though no diagnosis was made then. In 1927, after nearly 16 years of marriage, Charlie died. Nanny moved on quickly, too quickly. Husband 2, Frank Harrelson. Nanny married Frank Harrelson in 1929. Frank was a kind man, but an alcoholic. His drinking embarrassed Nanny, who dreamed of storybook romance inspired by the romantic magazines she devoured obsessively. Her solution was simple. Frank began experiencing severe gastrointestinal distress. He deteriorated rapidly. Doctors assumed alcohol had destroyed his health. In 1931, Frank died. At his funeral, witnesses later recalled something unsettling. Nanny laughed, softly, repeatedly, as if she couldn't help herself. Husband number 3. In 1942, Nanny married Arlie Lanning, a railroad worker. Arlie was controlling, abusive, and suspicious of Nanny's past. He demanded she stop reading romance magazines and tried to monitor her movements. What Arlie didn't know was that Nanny had grown methodical. She purchased arsenic, often disguised as rat poison, and began slipping it into his food and coffee in small doses, slow enough to avoid immediate suspicion. Arlie became chronically ill. Before his death in 1945, Nanny took out a life insurance policy on him. When he died, doctors listed the cause as heart failure. No autopsy was performed. Nanny collected the insurance money. She was smiling again. Husband number 4. Richard Morton. The final mistake. Her fourth and final husband, Richard Lawn Morton, married Nanny in 1952. Richard was already cautious. He knew she had been widowed multiple times, but loneliness overpowered fear. Within months of marriage, Richard fell violently ill. Doctors were baffled by his rapid decline. This time, Nanny made a fatal error. Richard's sister became suspicious. Too many deaths, too much coincidence. She insisted on an autopsy. The mask falls. The autopsy revealed massive arsenic poisoning. Authorities exhumed the bodies of Nanny's previous husbands. All tested positive for arsenic. When police arrested Nanny in 1954, they expected denial, tears, fear. Instead, she laughed. During interrogation, she confessed casually, almost cheerfully, to killing 4 of her husbands, her mother, her sister, and possibly her grandson, then claimed their life insurance funds. Her motive? "I was just trying to find the perfect man," she said. She never expressed remorse. Death of the giggling Granny Nanny Doss died in prison on June 2, 1965, from leukemia. She was 59 years old. She left behind no manifesto, no apology, only a legacy of poisoned love, and a chilling reminder that evil does not always shout. Sometimes it laughs softly while stirring your coffee. Why Nanny Doss still haunts America. What makes Nanny Doss terrifying isn't just her body count. It's how ordinary she seemed. No violence, no blood, no screams, just patience, poison, and a smile that never faded. Number 4, Evelyn Dick, a Canadian serial killer, a black widow. Everyone agreed that Evelyn Dick was beautiful. They also agreed that she was a cold-blooded killer who earned her infamy as the torso killer. Dick's crime came to light when some children hiking through the woods outside Hamilton, Ontario found a limbless, headless torso in the woods. The torso belonged to 39-year-old John Dick, a streetcar and bus driver who had been married to Evelyn for less than 6 months, thought the two were already estranged. Suspicions quickly turned to his spouse, who told police a string of strange tales about mafia hits and boyfriends. She was eventually charged with murder, along with her father and one of her boyfriends. Her trial became a media circuit, dominating headlines across Canada as tales of her dalliances with many powerful, rich, married men came out. Despite her connections in high society, she was convicted of murder in 1946 and sentenced to the gallows. Though she was acquitted on a technicality, her father was convicted of being an accessory after the fact in the murder of John Dick, specifically for dismembering his corpse in the basement of his home and burning the body parts in the furnace. When police searched her home and found the mummified body of an infant boy encased in cement in a suitcase and stored in her attic, it was Dick's own son. On trial for her, the infant's murder, it turned out she had slept with over 150 men, including the judge's own son. She was sentenced to life in prison, but was released in 1958 after serving only 11 years. After her release, Evelyn Dick disappeared from public life. She remarried, changed her identity, and relocated to a different place, and lived quietly until her death in 1967. Yet the questions never faded. Did Evelyn Dick murder her husband, or was she a desperate woman trapped in an abusive marriage? Number 5, Catherine Knight. Catherine Knight had a long history of violence towards the men in her life. all ramping up to the shockingly brutal murder of her boyfriend. The night the Australian butcher married her first husband, David Kellett, she allegedly tried to strangle him. Then, while she was even pregnant with her daughter, she torched his clothing and walloped him on the head with a frying pan. He eventually left her, and she took up another man, David Saunders. She murdered his puppy in front of him as a warning not to mess with her. But he didn't leave her until she stabbed him in the stomach with a pair of scissors during an argument. In October of 2001, Knight brutally stabbed her new live-in boyfriend, John Price, 37 times while he tried to escape. She then skinned him, hanging his skin from a meat hook, chopped him up, and started to cook his body parts. She set the table for a macabre dinner party with his children's names on place cards. Price had been concerned that something like this would happen and had told his friends that if he didn't show up at work the next day, Knight had killed him. When he wasn't on the job, they called the police. When investigators searched her home, they found his head in a pot, boiling away on the stove with some vegetables. Knight was promptly arrested. She is now known as Australia's most notorious psychopath and became the first woman in Australian history to be sentenced to life without parole. A movie based on her life and crimes is currently in progress. Number 6. Amy Archer Gilligan. It wasn't surprising that the residents of Amy Archer Gilligan's Windsor, Connecticut nursing home passed away. After all, many of her boarders were elderly and ailing. What was surprising, though, was that dozens of them died shortly after naming Archer Gilligan in their life insurance policies, or forking over $1,000 for their care while they still breathed. Between 1911 and 1916, at least 48 people died while in Archer Gilligan's care, including Archer Gilligan's husband. When one of her boarder's sisters got suspicious and went to the local Hartford Courant, they began to investigate what they later dubbed the murder factory. Soon, police began to investigate the trail of bodies in Archer Gilligan's wake, and everyone they exhumed during their investigation had traces of either arsenic or strychnine. Local shopkeepers confirmed that she purchased large quantities of arsenic to kill rats, and police also discovered that she had taken out sizable insurance policies on her husband. Archer Gilligan was arrested and indicted for poisoning 5 people, including her second husband. While suspected of killing at least 20 people, her lawyer convinced the prosecutor to charge her with only one murder, though. She was convicted, but the state appealed. She was retried, pleaded insanity, found guilty, and given life in prison. She was eventually transferred to a mental hospital where she died in 1962 at 94 years. Her dark history became the inspiration for the play, and later the Frank